Welcome to the Mehgic Podcast. I'm your host, Mehgic, and today we are going to be covering 3 of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories and talking about them in a little more detail. And we're going to have an interview with a special guest. Alright, I'm going to go through and give a quick summary of each of the poems and short stories we are going to be covering. The first one is The Raven. So the narrator is alone on a cold night, about to fall asleep, when he hears knocking at his door. He ignores it, but then hears the knocking again, but this time it's at his window. When the narrator opens the window, the raven flies in, and proceeds to only reply with nevermore. At this point, our narrator begins to ask it questions, but only getting the reply of nevermore effectively drives himself into madness. Our second story is Annabelle Lee. Our narrator recalls times of which he and Annabelle Lee once lived in love, until the clouds sent a gust of wind and made Annabelle Lee sick. She ends up passing away, but death will not stop the love between them. Our narrator then goes and sleeps with the dead body of Annabelle Lee because he's a creep. Our final short story is The Black Cat. The narrator's household has many animals within, but he is best friends with a black cat named Pluto. The narrator has a drinking problem and ends up getting drunk one night and torturing and killing his cat. This drives him a little more mad than he already was. Eventually he sees a stray cat that looks similar to Pluto a few years later, so they end up adopting him. And just like with Pluto, he got along at first only to want to kill it later. When he goes to kill the cat, his wife steps in, and he ends up killing her instead. He built a whole wall to cover up her body, and then he's undisturbed by the cat for the next few days until the police come to investigate about his wife's disappearance. The cat begins to howl as it was locked within the wall with the narrator's wife, leading the police to be able to find out the narrator is guilty. There's a few similarities within Edgar Allan Poe's pieces. The first one being the involvement of death. So in The Raven, Lenore is dead. I believe Lenore is his wife, and so in the beginning of the story, and when he first meets the Raven, he kind of thinks it's Lenore, and he is mourning the death of Lenore. In Annabelle Lee is dead. She dies to the gust of wind, or the sickness brought from the gust of wind. And in The Black Cat, the narrator kills his wife and his cat, and tries to kill his other cat. And I'm pretty sure their house burns down, but I don't think that has something to do with that. Our second similarity between all the pieces is the unreliable narrator. Defined by Layla L. Alamar. The unreliable narrator is a term coined in 1961 by Wayne Booth that is used to describe a narrator whose recounting of a tale is suspect, whether through willful deceit, amateur naviat, or mental instability. So in The Raven, the narrator is mentally unstable. As he talks to the Raven, he kind of drives himself further into madness, and it kind of makes his tale a little hard to believe, I guess. In Annabelle Lee, the narrator is willful deceit. His presence makes us question if Abigail ever even really loved him, as we only see one side of the story, and he isn't reliable to tell that story. We cannot trust him. And in The Black Cat, the narrator obviously is mentally unstable. He tried to kill 2 of his cats and just clapped his wife for really no good reason. So his recounting of the tale is also suspect. Please welcome our first guest to the Mehgic Podcast, Annabelle Lee, narrator.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How are you today? How you doing?
Oh, I'm feeling wonderful.
Very, very good. That's what I like to hear. Glad you're doing well. Are you ready to get started with some questions?
Yes, sir.
Alright. First question. Here on the note card it says, did you love Annabelle Lee?
Yes, I loved her, with my whole heart. It only ever felt as if my world only existed of her and I.
Oh, no, that's just romantic. Or is it? Did Annabelle Lee love you?
Oh, of course! She loved me. Annabelle Lee and I have something that no one else has experienced. True love. How dare you even ask such a silly question in my presence?
I am very sorry. I'm just reading the questions off the note card. Not my fault.
Those note cards need to be taught a lesson.
Oh, here, you can beat him up. Here you go. Why did the kinsmen take Annabelle Lee away?
The gust of wind made my beautiful Annabelle Lee sick, and they took her away from me. They wanted to take her, but it should have been me there by her side. She passed away because those idiot kinsmen took her away. I would have protected her. I would have saved her.
Yes. Do you think sleeping with Annabelle Lee now is wrong? I mean, she is dead, after all.
No, she is my wife. A husband should sleep with his wife, no? Our love is there even after death, and I'm sure it will continue even after mine.
You're weird, bro. Alright, thanks for coming on to the Mehgic Podcast.
I have mixed feelings about this show.
Our next guest is the narrator from The Black Cat. Please welcome the narrator from The Black Cat. We're gonna welcome Black Cat narrator to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm well.
That's good. Are you ready to start with some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Alright. So you struggle with alcohol, correct?
Yes, I've had a small problem early on, but recently it's gotten way worse than it should ever get. There's rarely a time where I'm not drinking.
That doesn't sound too good. So I'm aware that you had several animals in your house. Did you ever feel a connection to Pluto?
There were indeed several animals within the house, but most of them were from my wife. I only found a connection with Pluto. He was the chillest cat. But then my drinking problem got worse and I couldn't control my emotions. The one animal that I trusted in that house I turned on.
So if you personally had a bad ending to Pluto's story, then why would you adopt a stray cat that looks like Pluto?
I wanted to atone for my sins, I guess. I didn't feel like it ended the right way and wanted to feel the love of Pluto again. I miss my buddy. But that all went to hell very quick.
Did you hesitate at all when swinging at your wife?
Nope.
Alright, well thank you for coming on. That's the end of the podcast. Goodbye.